20 years ago here at BMCC, I was an adjunct instructor in the English department, and I was teaching my 8 a.m. class when everything happened. I'd come to school that day. There was the bluest sky. It was a beautiful, calm day, and I was with my students, and we heard a sound. And it sounded like trucks rumbling over metal plates in the street. And I happened to walk out into the hallway just about a minute later, 2 minutes later, and I ran into a dear colleague of mine who still works here as well. And he was ashen, and he was crying. And I took his arm and I said, "What's happened? What's going on?" And I thought it was something with him. And I wanted to comfort him. And he said, "I just saw a plane fly into the World Trade Center." And I didn't know what to think. But that sound came back to my mind. And my first response, it feels silly now, is I said, "Really?" And he said, "Yes, a plane." And I asked him if he was going to be okay, and he said yes, he had to go and see his class, and that he had to send them home. And I thought, oh, I need to do this as well. And I said, "Look, something's happened." And I told them something had happened at the World Trade Center, and we needed to all go home. And they could tell, just from the way I said it, that I was really serious. And I said, "Really, we need to go home." And something I thought about after that day was that I knew it was okay. It was okay for us to evacuate our students, that BMCC would understand. And by the time I got my students out of the classroom and had begged them to please go uptown or back to Brooklyn or to the Bronx, wherever they needed to go, and not to go downtown, by the time I got them out, the school had already begun its official evacuation. And by the time I got downstairs, the second plane had hit.
You remember the event in terms of the visuals. It occurred early in the morning, around 8 thereabouts, and it turned out that I was on campus in my office because we were conducting interviews for a position at the time. And we heard the initial boom of the first plane that hit the Trade Center, and people thought it was just simply an accident. Maybe a Piper Cub hit it by accident. But a few minutes later, when we heard the second boom, we looked out the window, you could see the plane sticking in the World Trade Center. It was very obvious what had occurred.
By the time the second plane hit, it was a foregone conclusion that this was terrorism. We had already evacuated Fitterman Hall on the first strike. On the second strike, our guys were basically trying to shut down the building, Fitterman Hall itself.
I thought about the fact that we knew that we had to get our kids to safety. And at that same time, people were being sent back upstairs in the towers. And it made me realize how special it was to work at a college where our first thought was, we've got to make sure our kids are safe. And I call them kids, my kids were 18 to 40 in that class, but they were mine. But that's how the school felt too. We had to get everyone to safety.
And we all gathered on the 7th floor, and we were looking through the window, watching and just talking about it.
At that time, I was trapped underground in the subways. I got out of the subways. Unfortunately, making my way through lower Manhattan, it was a very scary thing. It was very scary. It was like being on the moon. Everyone was covered in it looked like 1.5 inches of white powder. You couldn't tell white people from black people, from Asians. It was extremely quiet. It was eerie.
And then I headed to the Brooklyn Bridge. And I had my bicycle with me. So I was on the bridge with my bicycle. In this mass of people. And it was all kinds of people. And it was everyone crowding, and it took a while to even get onto the bridge. And by the time I got on, I was surrounded by people who were already covered, and who had some dust on them. There were women who had lost their shoes. They were in torn stockings. There were people looking, they were just in shock. So clearly people had come from the site itself, which was not very far away from BMCC. It's only about 4 blocks. So we're on the bridge. We're New Yorkers. We started talking to each other. People think strange things about New Yorkers, but we are really good in crisis situations, and we help each other. But this rumor went across the bridge that maybe the bridge was going to be hit too. And you could feel this ripple of terror. And then the oddest thing happened. I would never have predicted I would feel like this. But 2 F-111s, those Tomcat fighters like in Top Gun, flew over. And I saw them, and everybody saw them, and you could literally feel everybody just relaxed. It was like someone was on the scene. Someone had come to help.
I saw off our senior manager. We sent him up to 125th Street so that there would be a second location where we could run college business from a safe distance. So we were up at the MEOC, which is on 125th Street, and basically it was the president, myself, and our 35, 38 guys who ran the college.
President Perez, fortunately, was much more optimistic and much more adamant. He was like the captain of the ship. He was at BMCC and would not abandon it. I remember vividly him being on the rooftop, working it out so that CBS News could have a vantage point from the rooftop of BMCC, and we could get the word out that we were still there.
He had set a date that we were going to return, and regardless of what was happening, he was sticking with his date. Some of us kind of questioned that, but now we know that his vision was right. It was time for us to come back.
We worked on trying to get the college opened as soon as possible. When you take a look at all of the folks that we had down here, and I'm talking about the essential staff, as well as the staff that were at 125th Street, the things people did in order to get BMCC back into operation, the things required, you just did it. You didn't even know whether or not you could do it or not. You just did it, or you found a way to do it, or you called somebody who could do it.
The faculty, the staff, the administration, our purpose was singular, to make sure the students were all right and that they would come back and not lose any of their educational opportunities. It was a great opportunity when students would come into the lobby and you would see that faculty were sitting at a table. They had a huge book which indicated all the classrooms that, or the classes that were being offered, and all the new classrooms that were created in the room numbers where the students had to go, because obviously we'd lost all the classrooms at Fitterman Hall.
In a lot of ways, we're the little college that could, the little college that can. And we learned how important our mission is. And that even when everything is literally falling to pieces around us, like then and like now, that helping our students make the lives that they want to have is much bigger than the other things that are happening to us.
If you have a family that was together and you have a disaster that separates us for whatever reason, to show that you are still strong is to bring you back to the place before it all started, and to bring you back as one, and to bring the family back as one. This is the homestead. And if we couldn't return to the homestead and we remain scattered throughout the city, then we would be broken. And when you're broken, there is no strength. The resilience is not there. So it was important for us to show strength in unity, and that we're reconquering our space, because this is our home, this is where we belong, and this is where learning will take place.